Faxinero tiranas a formea millionaria na cadira de rodas. Ok a contitua no final. In a world where fortunes can flip like a coin, the life of Laura Sinclair was a masterpiece of wealth and glamour, until the fateful night when everything spiraled into chaos. Picture this. A grand mansion lit by silvery moonlight, the kind of place where whispers float like shadows. Laura, a powerful businesswoman in her prime, dominated boardrooms with a fierce gaze. Yet, in a split second, a single errant step sent her tumbling down the stairs, her world crashing in a cacophony of gasps and shattered dreams. The aftermath? The woman once envied by all now sat still in a wheelchair, her confidence replaced with doubt, her empire resting on fragile foundations. The critics were relentless. Every news article, every little gossip, speculated about her fall from grace. But that wasn't the strangest part. Enter Carlos, the unassuming janitor, whose daily routine had revolved around cleaning up the messes of the rich. No one really noticed him. But what was it that drew Laura to him? Was it his piercing gaze that seemed to see right through the facade? Was it the quiet strength hidden beneath his humble exterior? The air thickened with tension every time they exchanged fleeting looks, questions swirling. What could possibly connect them? As rumors intensified, it became clear that things were shifting. Was Carlos genuinely trying to help Laura regain her footing in life? Or was there something far darker at play? Whispers echoed through the halls, a chilling undercurrent of secrets, of hidden intentions. Was he simply being kind, or was he orchestrating something more sinister? Shadows danced menacingly around them, as if the very walls held their breaths. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But as the tension escalated, the audience couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was coming. The anxiety in the air crept like tendrils of smoke, filling the room as Laura began to uncover a web of lies that stretched far beyond her injury. Had Carlos really come to heal her, or was he there to exact revenge? And why, oh why, did she suddenly feel both frightened and strangely liberated in his presence? The night was closing in, and the answers lingered just out of reach, wrapping around them both in a thick blanket of suspense. What would happen next when Laura finally learned the truth behind Carlos's intentions? The atmosphere in the mansion was electric, a coiled spring waiting to snap. Laura stared at Carlos, a mix of confusion and curiosity swirling in her gut. Why did he care? Why was he here? Each glance he cast her way felt like a silent conversation, shrouded in layers of meaning. The shadows in the room felt darker, almost alive, hampering her breath. Laura, he said, each syllable layered with sincerity and weight. You can get through this. I know you can. His voice was steady, a stark contrast to the chaotic flurry racing through her mind. Could he really believe that? Or was there something about this moment he meant to exploit? She felt vulnerable, an exposed nerve under the bright lights of the room. But perhaps, just perhaps, that was the very thing she needed. You don't know what I've lost, Carlos, Laura shot back, her voice uncharacteristically brittle. You can't understand. He took a step closer, breaking the barrier she clung to. I might understand more than you think. The air thickened, a charged silence enveloping them. She could see his drive and intensity that frightened her, making her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with fear swallowing hard. Laura turned her gaze from him, focusing instead on the ornate chandelier above, its crystals glimmering like stars trapped in glass. But even that beauty flickered in her vision, overtaken by the unknown swirling between them. What is it that you want from me? She finally blurted, clawing at the tangled emotions rising inside. Why do you bother? Carlos didn't flinch. His expression held a depth that sent a shiver racing down her spine. To open your eyes. There's more at stake here than you realize. An unshakable chill coursed through her as she tried to decode his words. Was he hinting at something? She grabbed the edges of her wheelchair, a sudden need for stability flooding her. What are you talking about? You're the janitor. The disdain dripped from her words, but beneath them was a jagged tension that hinted at the truth. His presence hinted at there was power hidden beneath every simple layer. Perhaps you should learn to look beyond what you see. There are forces at play you cannot begin to measure, he replied, his voice low, each word a beckoning. Laura's heart thundered, the taste of anxiety turning bitter on her tongue. Were the rumors true? Was he entangled in something dark? Was that what drove the further wedge between her growing curiosity and fear? Just then, a loud crash echoed down the hall, shattering the moment and sending both of them into alert. The hairs on her arms stood on end as another noise followed, heavy thuds like footsteps, resonating in the stillness of the mansion. It wasn't just an accident. It sounded violent, purposeful. Stay here, Carlos commanded, slipping away before she could protest. Alone in the dim light, Laura's breath quickened. The warm, protective cocoon was stripped away, leaving her raw and exposed. She could hear Carlos's footsteps fade, leaving only dreadful silence in their wake. What did she really know about him? As uncertainty twisted in her mind, she grasped the wheelchair's arms, fighting against the panic gripping her. Then she spotted the glint of something under the edge of a rug nearby. An envelope pristine and untouched, gripped by an impulse she couldn't ignore. Laura leaned closer, pulse pounding in her ears. As she pulled at the paper, trembling fingers barely grasped it. The words jumped out, each sinking deeper into her chest, the answers perhaps, to questions she never knew to ask. What was Carlos hiding? What if the envelope contained secrets that would turn everything upside down again? In the shadows, danger lingered, and soon Laura would find out just how deep the betrayal could cut. The envelope felt foreign in her hands, its stark whiteness standing out against the dim, dusty room. Laura's mind raced as she carefully unfolded the paper, her heart hammering against her ribcage. Each word unfolded like a secret scripture, pulling her deeper into a web of uncertainty. She inhaled sharply, her breath catching as she read the message. The handwritten note was terse, the ink scrawled in hurried strokes. They're watching. Don't trust anyone. Find the truth before it's too late. The weight of those words sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through her veins. Who was watching? And what truth was she supposed to find? In that moment, a chill gripped her as her thoughts raced. Could Carlos be one of them, or had he genuinely come to warn her? An ear-splitting crash erupted from down the hall, making her jump. Instinctively, she gripped the envelope tighter, stomach twisting. If danger was lurking around her, she would need to be ready. She couldn't just wait, helpless, for Carlos to return. With a bolstered resolve, Laura maneuvered her wheelchair toward the entrance of the room, her heart racing with each turn of the wheels. The mansion stretched before her, dark and labyrinthine, with shadows twisting into eerie shapes. The heavy thuds reverberated again, a deep boom echoing in the silence that hung thick like fog. Carlos, she called, her voice barely a whisper, fear surging through her. There was no response, just the relentless echo of her voice fading into the stillness. She could feel the tension tightening around her like a noose. The familiar walls of the mansion suddenly felt foreign, a maze with no escape. She edged further down the hallway, her senses on high alert. Each creak of the old wood beneath her wheels felt monumental. Each breath echoed the pulsating dread that had settled in the pit of her stomach. Turning a corner, she paused, peeking into a shadowed alcove. No sign of Carlos. Just as she was about to retreat, she caught a flicker of motion, a shadow darting by, quick and silent. It sent a shudder of apprehension racing through her. "Who's there?" she called out, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her fear. Silence answered. Then a low murmur drifted from the depths of the mansion, like whispers in the wind. Her heart pounded ferociously, each beat echoing the urgency swelling inside. Should she press deeper or retreat? But that envelope, those words called to her. The pull of the mystery was stronger than her fear. She turned another corner, her eyes scanning the dimly lit passageways, searching for any sign of danger. Then she stumbled upon a door partially ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the darkness. Cautiously she approached, her mind racing. What could be inside? What if it contained the answers to the questions swirling like a storm inside her? As she pushed the door open, the hinges creaked ominously. Her breath hitched at the sight that met her, an empty room, but with a single ominous detail. A small empty chair in the center, its back to her, and the faint scent of something acrid in the air. It was wrong, so wrong, and her gut twisted with apprehension. The shadows danced, and suddenly she heard a low grunt, a sound muffled by the walls. It was coming from behind that chair. Laura felt the noose of fear tighten, and she knew this was it. She was on the cusp of something big, and the stakes were rising. "Carlos," she called out, her voice a fragile thread in the overwhelming silence. What if she didn't get an answer? What if nothing would ever be the same again? With a deep breath to steel herself, she wheeled closer, daring to peer around the chair. But there was no turning back now. In her pursuit of the truth, would she find freedom or fall into darkness? The answer lay just beyond the edge of her grasp. And as she leaned forward, the truth began to reveal itself, sharp and cold like a knife at her throat. As Laura leaned in, her heart stopped. The figure behind the chair stirred, then slowly turned. It wasn't Carlos. It was a stranger, gaunt and tangled in shadows, a wild look in his eyes that sent her pulse racing. Her instincts screamed at her to retreat, but curiosity anchored her in place. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. The acrid smell intensified, making her eyes water and her throat tighten. "Laura, do you really not recognize me?" he rasped, his voice low and haunting. She squinted, trying to process his features, but they were obscured by the dim light and layers of grime. Panic coiled in her gut. Had she met him before? "Get away from me," she exclaimed, her hands gripping her wheelchair's wheels tightly. Instinctively, she began to back away, looking for an escape. "Wait." He leaned forward, almost pleading. "You need to listen. They're coming for you. You can't trust anyone, not even Carlos." Each word pierced her chest like a shard of glass. "What do you know about Carlos?" The name tasted bitter on her tongue as fear washed over her like icy water. "I worked for your family," he said, desperation flaring in his eyes. "But I uncovered something dangerous. It's not just about you. It's about the legacy they want to keep buried." Laura's breath quickened. The walls around her felt like they were closing in, the air thick with tension and the promise of revelation. "Look," he continued, voice urgent. "The way he looks at you, he's hiding something. I got too close and it almost cost me my life. They found me, and now they'll find you too." You have to." The sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hall, each thump like a countdown. The stranger froze, his wide eyes darting toward the source of the sound. "Hide," he urged, but there was nowhere to go. Laura's heart raced. Every muscle in her body tensed with panic. She peered around, searching desperately for an exit, but the room confined her like a cage. The footsteps grew closer, a rhythm that sounded deliberate and menacing. Suddenly, the door swung wide, slamming against the wall. The figure standing in the doorway radiated authority, tall and imposing. Carlos, bathed in an ominous light, stared at them with an expression that made her blood run cold. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice steady but laced with something darker. The tension in the room crackled like static. Laura's eyes darted between Carlos and the stranger. The man's expression shifted from fear to defiance in an instant. He stood up slightly, as if considering confronting the threat. "Carlos is lying," he shouted suddenly. "He's not who you think he is, Laura." The weight of the accusation hung like a lead weight in the air. Laura's thoughts raced, her heart pounding faster than she could catch her breath. Everything began to unravel just as fast as it had come together. "Leave her alone," Carlos barked, stepping forward, his fists clenched. "Stop," Laura cried out, feeling the riptide of her confusion tugging her under. She couldn't decide whom to trust. The air around her thickened with distrust, yet it resonated with a desperate need to know the truth. Just then, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket, breaking the suffocating silence. She jumped, startled. Could it be a lifeline? "That's just a distraction," the stranger shouted. "Answer it. It could be your only chance." But would answering it seal her fate or save her? As Laura stared into Carlos's darkened eyes, the buzzing intensified, daring her to make a choice. Would she risk everything to unveil the truth, or silence the chaos swirling around her? And in that moment, time froze. A choice loomed ahead, fragile as glass, teetering on the brink of revelation. Fear gripped Laura as she felt the weight of the moment suffocating her. The phone buzzed again, louder this time, shaking in her pocket like an alarm. It felt like life and death. A high-stakes gamble that might change everything. She wanted to scream, to throw the phone down and run, but there was nowhere to escape. Don't listen to him. Carlos's voice was cold as ice, cutting through her panic. His gaze never left the stranger, muscles taut as he prepared to charge. No, please, just a second, Laura cried, her eyes darting between the two men. The air crackled with tension, each second stretching endlessly. Time seemed to blur, and all she could hear was her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Answer it now, the stranger urged again, gesturing wildly. You have to trust me for once. They're not who they say they are. You're in danger. A shiver raced down her spine. She looked at Carlos, searching for an answer, but all she saw was an impenetrable facade. His brow was furrowed, anger simmering beneath the surface, and for a moment, she felt as if she didn't know him at all, but fear for her safety overshadowed everything else. She fished the phone out of her pocket, her fingers trembling, and swiped to answer. Hello? Her voice quivered, anticipation curling in her stomach. Static crackled, and then the line connected. Laura, you have to listen. A frantic voice on the other end pierced through the noise, jolting her back to reality. Get out. Now. They're coming for you. Her heart raced to the rhythm of the warning. Who's coming? She gasped, her mind racing, but just then Carlos lunged forward, and her fear escalated into a fight-or-flight frenzy. Give me that, he shouted, reaching for the phone. She pulled back, adrenaline surging through her veins. No, Carlos, stop. I need to know. Beside her, the stranger was moving too, his arms outstretched, eyes wide with urgency. Trust me, Laura. You can't let him take it. As if frozen in a moment of chaos, Laura felt the room spin. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision. The stranger's face flickering with both desperation and something else, hope? Put it down. Carlos's booming command shattered her thoughts, and she felt a surge of defiance. No. The word is fierce as she clutched the phone tightly. You're the one hiding something. Laura, Carlos begged, voice now strained. You don't understand. The line crackled again, and a new voice filled her ear. You must trust your instincts. Don't let him deceive you. Eyes wide, Laura's breath caught in her throat. She felt reality unraveling like a fraying thread, revealing the chaos behind it. Behind her, the stranger's expression mirrored her fear. They'll kill you if you stay. His words echoed with chilling certainty. Instinct kicked in again as she weighed the danger looming before her. Should she trust the man who claimed to know her, or the one who had been by her side all along? A noise from outside echoed down the corridor, making her freeze violently. Footsteps marching with purpose, closing in on the room. Hide! She shouted, her voice rising. She had to find a way out. Carlos's expression morphed into something darker. You're both making a big mistake. Laura's heart pounded in her ears as she desperately searched for options. She could hear the heavy footsteps approaching, each stomp a reminder of how little time she had left. Make a choice, Laura. The stranger yelled, spinning her way. Do it. Now. And in that fraught moment, with danger looming closer than ever, the truth dangled before her like a haunting specter. Would she choose to face the unknown or retreat into the dark, suffocated by lies? The footsteps were almost there. What would she decide when the door burst open? The door burst open with a sharp crash, splintering the moment into chaos. Laura's heart raced, pounding against her ribcage like a caged bird desperate to escape. A team of stern-looking men, clad in matching black suits, stormed into the room, eyes narrowing as they scanned the space. Their presence nearly suffocated her, an electric tension filling the air. Each man wore an expression of grim determination, armed with an authority that demanded respect. Get down! Carlos shouted, shoving Laura behind him as the stranger dove for cover. Laura's world narrowed as adrenaline surged, making everything except for the urgency of the moment fade away. Don't even think about it. One of the men advanced, his voice a low growl that made her spine tingle. We have orders. Carlos squared his shoulders, blocking Laura from view. You can't take her. She's not going anywhere with you. Move aside, the man commanded, reaching for something under his jacket. As panic clawed at Laura's throat, she felt the phone slip from her hand. It fell to the floor, sliding beneath the nearest table, a lifeline lost in the chaos. She wanted to scream, to reach for it, but fear rooted her feet. The footsteps of the intruders echoed ominously, filling the space with a sense of impending doom. One man stepped closer to Carlos, eyes cold and measuring. "We have business with her. It's not a negotiation." Desperation surged. In that heartbeat, Laura recalled the frantic voice on the other end of the line. "Get out. Now." The weight of their warning pressed down on her. "Carlos, move," she pleaded, but her words felt trapped in her throat, heavy with uncertainty. Then the stranger broke cover, lunging at the black-suited men with surprising ferocity. "You're not taking her." His body collided with one of them, sending them both crashing against the wall. "Stop!" Laura screamed, instinctively stepping forward, but a firm grip on her arm yanked her back. "Stay!" Carlos hissed, eyes fierce, scanning the fray. For a split second, Laura caught sight of the chaos unfurling, a flurry of punches thrown, the clatter of a briefcase hitting the ground. She felt the world slipping away from her grasp, a surreal blur of movement, danger, and choices that were never meant to be hers. The stranger, struggling against two of the men, suddenly called out to Laura. "Trust your gut. Get to safety." Safety? Where could she go? The walls felt like they were closing in, and the footsteps around her became a haunting soundtrack of her fate. Just then, echoes of rapid footsteps sounded from the hallway. More men were coming. The reality hit her hard. They were cornered. "Laura." Carlos's voice was urgent, breaking through her haze. "We have to move now." What they really needed was a plan, but all she felt was raw panic. She needed a decision, a way to either escape this nightmare or confront it once and for all. Suddenly, a loud crash filled the room as the stranger was flung aside, hitting the ground. He groaned, his fight lost in that moment. "Go. Now," Carlos barked, and with no time to waste, Laura turned to sprint toward the back exit when she spotted her phone behind the table, but a rattle of a gun cocking froze her in place. "Stop right there," one of the men shouted, aiming the weapon at her. Panic flooded her, a storm washing over everything. Laura's breath quickened. The choice she dreaded had come crashing down like a tidal wave. In this moment of sheer terror, she realized one crushing truth. There was no backing down anymore. As she took a step toward her own fate, her mind raced. What awaited her on the other side of that door? Would she find a way to escape, or was this the reckoning she had always feared? Laura's legs trembled, as if every muscle had turned to jelly. The threat of the gun barrel hovered in her mind like a dark cloud, and her instincts screamed for her to run, yet an invisible chain anchored her to the spot. "Let her go," Carlos shouted, his voice raw with desperation. The stranger lay on the floor, struggling to rise, trying to break free from the grasp of those men who now towered over him. "Enough games," the lead man shouted, still pointing his weapon at Laura. "I want to ask twice." The fear in his voice sent chills down Laura's spine. How had everything reached this boiling point so quickly? Instinctively, she glanced at the phone, her lifeline to the world outside this nightmare. "Laura." Carlos's voice cut through the tension, turning her gaze back to him. "What are you waiting for? Move." The man with the gun shifted slightly, his grip tightening. An overwhelming urge to flee surged through her, clawing at her sanity. If she stayed, what would happen? And if she ran, what chance did she truly have? In that moment, clarity enveloped her like a fog lifting at dawn. A flicker of rebellion ignited within her. With a deep breath, she dove toward the phone, the sudden movement breaking the fog of fear that had shackled her. "Stop!" the man screamed, his finger twitching on the trigger. But Laura felt a rush of adrenaline. She scooped her phone from the floor, feeling the cool plastic against her palm. It was now or never. Ignoring the sound of the gun being ready to fire, she pivoted on her heel and bolted toward the back exit. "Don't let her get away," someone yelled, and heavy footsteps thundered behind her. The door she had to reach loomed ahead like a beacon of hope, urging her forward. The hallway stretched infinitely, her heart pounding like a war drum in her ears as she ran faster than she ever thought possible. "Get back here," a voice roared, but it was drowned out by the chaos of her own heartbeat. But just as she reached the exit, something clamped down on her arm, jerking her back into a whirlwind of movement. It was Carlos, pulling her out of danger's path just as a deafening shot rang out behind them. The impact sent a shockwave rattling through the air. "Run!" he shouted, his urgency propelling her forward. Together, they plunged through the door into a back alley, the harsh sense of grease and garbage flooding her senses. They skidded to a halt, breathless and wide-eyed. The alley was dark, littered with the remnants of despair. Where could they hide? Where could they go? Laura clutched the phone in her hand, desperation gnawing at her mind. What do we do now? She gasped, eyes flitting wildly around them for any hints of safety. Carlos looked down the alley, urgency etched across his face. We need to keep moving. They 1T stop. They'll know we're out here. Laura's heart sank. Had they truly escaped? Or had they just triggered the beginning of a relentless chase? Without waiting for an answer, Carlos grabbed Laura's hand, dragging her forward. They sprinted down the alley, the sounds of chaos echoing behind them. Every footstep felt like a countdown to impending doom. Suddenly, Carlos froze, pulling her into a dark doorway. They pressed against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. Shadows danced around them, the murmur of approaching voices mixing with the adrenaline coursing through her veins. This isn't over, Carlos whispered, eyes darting anxiously. We need a plan. And fast. With adrenaline still racing through her, Laura felt a flicker of defiance rising. She wasn't just going to run anymore. She had to fight back. What had they stumbled into? And who was pulling the strings? As the darkness enveloped them, she braced herself for the next jaw-dropping revelation waiting just around the corner. What secrets lay ahead? In the muffled shadows, time seemed to stretch endlessly. Laura's breath quickened as she and Carlos pressed against the cold, damp wall of the doorway. Every creak, every whisper from outside felt like a countdown, amplifying the tension in the air. Did you see how many there were? She whispered, her voice shaking. Carlos furrowed his brow, straining to catch any sound that drifted from the alley. Too many, he replied after a heartbeat, his eyes narrowing. We need to find somewhere deeper to hide. They'll be out for blood. Laura nodded, feeling the weight of his words crash down on her. Panic threatened to swallow her whole, but she fought it off, searching for a flicker of hope. What if we call for help? We can alert the police or anyone. Not yet, Carlos hissed, his grip tightening on her wrist. If we expose ourselves, it'll be over. We're already targets. She swallowed hard, forcing her mind to focus. The alley felt more like a trap, and every moment they stayed exposed whittled away their chances of survival. Just then, the sharp sound of boots slapping against the pavement reverberated down the alley. Did you hear that? Carlos breathed, his eyes darting to the alley entrance, the encroaching shadows growing more ominous. The voices were getting closer, a low murmur weaving through the gaps in the darkness, and Laura's heart rate skyrocketed. Finally she whispered, what if we circle around? There has to be an exit somewhere. We have to stick together, Carlos replied with determination. He started moving toward the other end of the doorway, and Laura followed, stepping carefully to avoid any noise. As they peered around the corner, the alley transformed into a nightmare. The men were right outside, frustrated voices lacing the thick air. One of them cursed under his breath, and Laura felt the blood drain from her face. What do we do? She asked, fear hitching in her throat. Carlos turned, eyes brimming with intensity. We wait for the right moment. We can't let them see us. The tension in the air was suffocating. They leaned against the wall just as a heated discussion erupted among the men. One shouted, they can't have gone far. We have to split up. Cover more ground. Laura's eyes widened. This was their chance. Carlos, before she could finish her thought, a sharp snap echoed through the air as one of the men kicked a trash can, rattling its contents and echoing through the silence like a gunshot. The two of them flinched, the sound ringing in her ears, and instinct kicked in. Now, move, Carlos urged, pulling her further back into the hiding spot just as the men's heads whipped around in their direction. Eyes narrowing down a surge of adrenaline, they bolted into the deeper recesses of the alley. The darkness swallowed them, but hope flickered with every step. They could hear shouting behind them as footsteps charged further away. Keep going, Carlos urged, his voice steady even as the fear gripped Laura's heart. The narrow passage twisted ahead, leading into a patch of faint light. Do you think they saw us? She panted, glancing back. No, he said with a mixture of hope and doubt. But we can't stop until we're far away from them. Then as they pulled into an open street, a series of flashing lights caught Laura's eye. Hope surged within her. "The police!" she gasped, almost disbelieving. But just as they took a step toward the street, a figure materialized from the darkness, blocking their path. "Not so fast," he grinned, shadows dancing on his face, ominous and chilling. With dread pooling in her stomach, Laura realized the truth: this nightmare was just beginning. What had they walked into, and would they ever escape the grip of this darkness? With her heart racing, she faced the man as an unsettling understanding washed over her. This was just the first layer of a web they had stumbled into. What deeper calamities lurked in the shadows waiting to strike next? The figure looming before them was the embodiment of danger, muscles coiled and eyes gleaming with menace. Laura's heart dropped into her stomach. She could practically hear the blood rushing in her ears as the man took a step forward, blocking their escape. "Who are you?" Carlos demanded, his voice low and steady, but Laura could feel the tension radiating off him. They had little time before the chaos of the alley would draw others into their fate. The man chuckled, a sharp, mirthless sound. "No need for introductions in a game of cat and mouse. You're the ones who've made quite a stir tonight." Laura exchanged a fear-stricken glance with Carlos, her mind racing. What did he mean? They were just trying to escape to find safety. But as the memories of the shouts and angry voices echoed through her mind, she realized their worst fears were colliding in this moment. "Let us through," Carlos said, trying to sound assertive, but the shaking in his hands gave him away. The man tilted his head, considering the request as if it were a joke. "Why would I do that? You see, I thrive on seeing faces like yours filled with panic, confusion. It's all too delicious." A sudden ring broke the oppressive air as Carlos's phone vibrated violently in his pocket. Laura's heart seized. "Silence it," she hissed, knowing it could bring unwanted attention. But Carlos was frozen, eyes locked on the figure before them. "I can't. What if it's someone who can help?" The man laughed again, and this time it felt like shards of glass. "Help? There's only one way out of this. Are you ready to play?" Without warning, he lunged at Carlos, making a swift grab for him. Reflex kicking in, Laura pushed Carlos aside, grabbing the man's arm and twisting. The element of surprise caught him off guard. "Run!" she shouted, adrenaline coursing through her as she struggled to break free. Carlos didn't hesitate. He dashed away, taking the path back down the alley, but the man regained his balance, swinging around to face Laura, eyes narrowed with rage. "You shouldn't have done that." Laura's pulse raced. She could feel her legs scream for release, but she had to think. The alley stretched behind her like a labyrinth. She had to buy Carlos time to give him a chance to escape. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted, holding her ground, trying to focus amid the chaos. "What do you want?" The man grinned, revealing teeth too sharp, echoing a predator's approach. "What I want, dear, is the thrill of the hunt. And you're just the appetizer." In her panic, she glanced behind, where the streetlights flickered, hinting at a potential escape. If she could just stall him for a moment longer. Without warning, she made a sudden dash toward the exit, veering around a pile of discarded crates. As she darted toward the light, she heard him roar in frustration. "You won't get away that easily." An echo of footsteps thundered behind her. She burst into the street, the reflected lights illuminating the chaos around her. People were moving with purpose, unaware of the danger lurking in the wings. "Carlos!" she screamed, looking for him, her heart pounding against her chest. Suddenly a hand gripped her shoulder and she spun, ready to fight back, but it wasn't Carlos. A stranger, wide-eyed and breathless, stared at her. "Did you see him? The man in the alley?" "Yes." But the words tangled in her throat as she saw a flash of movement behind the stranger. The man appeared, mouth twisted in a wild grin, emerging from the shadows. He wasn't done yet. "Game on, sweetheart." Before she could react, he lunged again, and Laura felt panic surge through her veins, the streets narrowing around her. She had to find a way to survive this horrifying chase. What fate awaited them in the twisted game he played? The answer loomed behind her, and with each heartbeat, the danger grew closer. What was the next move in this deadly dance? Laura's heart raced as chaos erupted around her. The city lights blurred into a kaleidoscope of color as she swerved to dodge an incoming fist. The stranger's smile morphed into something feral, and she felt trapped between fear and sheer willpower. Was this the end of her fight? Laura. A voice pierced through the din. Carlos emerged from the thick of the crowd, eyes wide and searching. Relief washed over her, but it was quickly drowned by the urgency of the situation. This way, he shouted, waving her over as he grabbed her hand, pulling her into a side alley. Sprinting hard, the rhythm of their quickened steps matched the frantic beating of their hearts. Laura could hear the sounds of pursuit, the pounding footsteps behind them, the shouts of the man driven by madness. She chased the dwindling hope that maybe, just maybe, they could escape or at least figure this out. We need to find somewhere safe. Carlos gasped, determination etched on his face. They turned another corner into another narrow passage, and the lives of two strangers tangled in a web of danger surged into focus. The world outside felt like a distant dream, swallowed by the darkness surrounding them. We can't just keep running, she insisted, her voice trembling with adrenaline. We need to confront this. Carlos halted, spinning to face her. Confront what? A maniac who thinks we're part of some game? That's insane. I know, she shot back, but I'd rather take a stand than live in fear. He opened his mouth to argue but stopped, taking a steadying breath. All right, let us figure this out. We can't keep running forever. Just as they strategized their next move, the echoing footsteps drew closer, signaling that their time was up. We need to find a way to bait him, Laura proposed, her fingers tightening around the phone still clutched in her hand. I'll show him what he wants. You can lead him away while I find a way to trap him somehow. Carlos hesitated, glancing instinctively over his shoulder. Are you sure? It's risky. He might not play by the rules. Nothing about this is safe anymore, she replied, her voice gaining strength. But staying silent is even worse. And I refuse to be a pawn in his game. Okay then, Carlos relented, his eyes narrowing with focus. I'll lead him on a chase. You be the bait. With a shared nod, they braced themselves. The darkness around them began to close in, an ominous presence that felt tangible. On 3, Carlos whispered, signaling Laura's phone as he counted down in rapid succession. 1, 2, 3. Laura stepped into the openness of the alley while Carlos darted back toward the street, yelling at the top of his lungs. Come on. You think you can catch us? We're not afraid of you. The figure appeared from the shadows, eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. You think you can get away from me? He growled, charging toward Carlos like a hungry wolf. Laura clung to hope, a bubbling anxiety swirling in her chest. She needed to act, needed to find a way to take control of this terrifying situation. Over here, she shouted, drawing the stranger's attention back towards her. He turned, fixation shifting from Carlos as he approached, a twisted grin spreading across his face. There you are. Trying to use your little friend as bait? Amusing. Amusing? Is that what you call it? She backed away slowly, studying the rough brick wall behind her, her racing heart echoing in her ears. It's pathetic. He roared in laughter, a cackle that sent chills down her spine. You think you're witty, but there's no escape for you. You're just a scared little girl. Maybe he was right. Her mind scrambled and spun until clarity struck. Instead of fear, why not use their surroundings? With sudden resolve, Laura turned and dashed a calculated move through the alley and into an old, abandoned building she remembered from childhood. Caught off guard, the man followed her, veering closer with each pounding step. Inside, shadows loomed large, thickening the air, pushing past the thresholds of fear that once governed her. Barely glancing back, she reached for something, a rusted old pipe lying against the wall. The man appeared in the doorway, eyes ablaze with triumph, but Laura was ready. She gripped the pipe tightly and swung with all her might. The impact landed against his chest, sending him staggering back. Laura! Carlos's voice called from outside as confusion erupted behind him. Get out! She yelled back, adrenaline infusing every ounce of her being. I've got this. Powered by rage and defiance, she pressed forward, shockwaves of liberation piercing through the fear. The man surged at her again, but she swung the pipe again, adrenaline pumping as she crafted her resilience. Why can't you see? He bellowed, a mix of disbelief and ire. You'll never win. No, she replied, steadying her breath as reality dawned. But I'll fight for my chance to live. With one last powerful swing, she aimed for his head, the others having followed. But when the piercing sound of sirens broke through the tension, The man turned in frustration, believing escape was still an option. Not so fast. Carlos appeared at the doorway again, catching the stranger's gaze and holding it long enough for Laura to move behind her. The lights flashed through the doorway, police storming the area, voices calling out for them to put their hands up. Before he could react, Laura seized her moment. A fierce energy surged through her spine, and she swung the pipe again. This time it met its target, knocking the man to the ground, finally securing her strength. "Leave her alone." Carlos rushed toward her, eyes wild with concern but filled with admiration. More police filed into the building, isolating the man like prey, shackled down by their collective presence. The adrenaline faded, the heart-pounding marathon yielding to exhaustion. They were safe. Finally, as the chaos around them receded, Laura's soul felt lighter, stripped of its old skin. The shadows of fear still lingered but were met with a newfound sense of determination. Carlos stepped closer, concern melting into warmth. "You really stepped up back there. I didn't think you had it in you." And for the first time since her fall, she found her voice. "Neither did I. But I'm not just a victim anymore." They exchanged looks, both communicating a shared understanding of what had transpired. With one last sigh, Laura glanced around, taking in the aftermath. The city may have felt darker before, but now there seemed to be a path emerging through the fog. It had started as a game, but it had become a battle for survival, not just for herself, but for the hope of conquering what awaited from the darkness. "Stay close," Carlos said, and she smiled, ready for whatever came next. This was not the end. It was a new beginning, a relentless fight to uncover the truth, and they would face it together. So have you heard? Subscribe immediately. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let us know you loved it. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters. Let us do this together.